What's going on, guys? Welcome back. We're going to talk about trigger, which is the last piece, the third piece of the marksmanship that of the 9 things that we talked about. If you haven't seen the 9 things video, make sure that you go watch that. Just released a video on grip, just released a video on eyes, and we're going to do trigger, which is the third and last final piece of the marksmanship package that I think you need to know and train in order to be better at shooting. Again, if you're shooting on the rifle side instead of grip, you're going to have more of the mount, right? You're not gonna have a grip, but then your eyes are worked out very similarly and do very similar things. Trigger, same here with the pistol, whether it's rifle, pistol, whatever, your trigger's gonna do very, very similar things. I think you have to be even more deliberate with your trigger on a pistol platform than you do on a rifle, but I'm not even gonna open that can of worms. So trigger, why is it important? Why is it one of the marksmanship foundations, if you will? I think trigger can make your job easier if you are a master at it. And in order to become a master at it, you need to be very intimate with your platform. Each platform is going to have a slightly different pull length, pull weight. Maybe you have a tab on the shoe of your trigger. Maybe you have a flat face trigger. Maybe you have a 1.5 pound 2011 trigger. Maybe you have, like for me, like a 2.5, 3, probably 3-ish pound trigger on this Beretta that breaks pretty much vertical. It's a very nice trigger. I mean, of course, I came up with it with my buddy Ben, so you better believe it's a very good trigger. But when I shoot my double single Beretta and I have that longer pull, I have to know how to manipulate that in a way that makes sense, right? That supports me shooting aggressively without moving the gun. Obviously, grip is gonna play a big role in that. Obviously, my eyes are gonna play a big role in that. But my trigger can support the job, or it can make things more challenging, more difficult. So I want to train the trigger as well as the grip, as well as the eyes. When we talk about trigger, for me, the way I talk about it in class is the travel, right? The trigger travel is what I'm interested in training. I want to know, how much do I need to travel to make the trigger go off? Is there travel beyond the trigger going off? In other words, like for me to break a 3-pound trigger, am I spending 16 pounds worth of pressure? I think that's gonna be too much. And if you've never shot that pistol before, that platform before, you may have way more pressure than necessary to just make sure that it's functional. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. When I do demos in class on somebody's pistol that is not mine, I will often press the trigger. You know, I'll try to get a dry press if I can, if I'm afforded to, just to kind of get a sense of what that feels like. And if I don't, go straight into shooting something, I will probably use more pressure than is necessary because I am not yet intimate with that trigger. But what you'll find if you will spend the time to get intimate with your trigger, your platform, is that you're going to learn more or less to give just enough pressure, maybe just a little more pressure than necessary to make it go off. And I think if the majority of your training is deliberate in that way, that you can, like, man, I can press the trigger violently, but only with as much pressure as necessary. Because I can move my finger very, very quickly, but it doesn't have to be 100 pounds, 100 pounds, 100 pounds. It can be 5 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 pounds, right? It's the velocity of the trigger and the weight of the trigger, or the velocity of your finger, or the way that you're putting behind it is not, doesn't necessarily have to match. I hope that makes sense. So the more in tune you are with your platform, the more you know how much you're gonna break it. On test day, a little anxious, a little nervous, or whatever, you're going to probably do more than necessary. So if you're training to always press like 12 pounds worth of trigger when your trigger is a 4-pound trigger, man, you might get 16, 20 pounds worth of press, tons of tension, and I think it makes things deteriorate, not get better for you. So learning, getting a lot of volume of training where you're just doing the right amount for what you need is going to give you that more often, even under pressure. It certainly has for me, certainly has for tons of students and clients. So I would submit to you that you need to get very intimate with your trigger. And regardless of, again, double, single, single only, whatever, my buddy Ben and I also developed a trigger, 2 Patriots, by the way, for the double single Beretta. And that first pull is long. Certainly, it's a great pull. Like, it's a nice smooth pull, because I've sent all my Berettas to Langdon Tactical. They do a very good job making sure that the triggers work phenomenal, as good as you could possibly get on a Beretta. But even that being said, I am used to pulling this trigger, right? And so I have like a 2.5, 3-pound trigger that I know like how short it is, I know how much travel there is behind it, I know how much weight there is behind it. When I switch to that platform, I'll spend some time on that one and try to get really comfortable, really accustomed to it. Like, just like this, me like just pressing the trigger a few times. Notice I'm resetting. You don't hear the reset. I'm not pinning the trigger. Never, ever, ever pin the trigger. If you're still one of those people peasant, don't pin the trigger. Don't ever pin the trigger. You do not need to hear the reset. In fact, I don't know any high-level shooter that you can hear the reset while they're shooting. Never, ever, ever has it happened. Nor have I ever heard an OIS where somebody's pinning the trigger and resetting. So like that whole mentality of surprise break and then pin and reset, like that stuff needs to go away. It's so like 40 years ago. If you're still that person, please reach out. Let me help you break out of that. You're not going to get any more accurate by pinning the trigger. You're certainly not faster by pinning the trigger. So just stop that. Just stop. Stop. But what I just did there, like resetting the slide and moving my finger just enough so that I can grab the next mechanical reset, is enough to get the next mechanical reset. I could do it this way. Let's see if you guys can see me. Like press the trigger. Yes, the trigger will go off every single time, but what am I adding by large margin? A lot of travel. What does travel take? More of time. More travel, more time. If you and I are walking the same speed, but you're closer to where we're going, you're gonna get there before me. So obviously just travel. Reducing the amount of travel of your finger is going to help you shoot sooner, right? If you shoot sooner, we don't have to work any harder to get faster splits. Just saying. The other thing is with less travel, there's less of an opportunity for dummy, me, to jump in there and move the gun while I'm pressing the trigger. If I am going from there to there, like I said, that's my trigger press, this long. There's a lot of opportunity between that point and this point for me to do something dumb, move the gun, have some tension, whatever, get distracted, right? There's a lot of opportunity. But what if I only have to move this far? If the less I travel, the less of an opportunity for me to move the gun. Can I still do it wrong? Absolutely. The less an opportunity to do it wrong and the sooner the shot. The argument against any kind of shorter trigger travel or the discovery of the shorter trigger travel would be that, well, I get trigger freeze. Well, I think that's definitely a training problem, a tension problem that everybody has, even if you're like this guy. But this guy doesn't give himself an opportunity to manipulate the trigger masterfully per se. That does not mean that they're not super high level, even champion level guys that come off the shoot every single time. I am not saying that at all. There's very, very good shooters on planet Earth that can leave the shoot and reapply the same amount of pressure and they break the trigger every single time and they don't miss shots and all stuff. Good. Salute you. You're amazing. I support you. But for the rest of us that want to take advantage of every possible opportunity, I'm telling you, once I've already made contact with the shoe of the trigger, once I've already made contact and I'm pressing the trigger multiple times, why would I want to waste the progress I've made by releasing the trigger completely and starting again, releasing completely and starting again? I can then, like you can't even tell my finger is really moving forward and off the shoe, but I have masterfully spent the time, and I think you should too, to learn your platform. I can move forward while the gun is resetting. There's no pinning, there's no extra tension to do that, but there is just an amount of travel that makes sense for this platform that makes me ready to shoot again once the visual thing has been assessed. Does that thing need more shooting? If I decided I'm going to shoot again, is my gun in the right spot of the target? Then all I have to do is finish presses instead of initiating presses from a longer distance. Again, the travel of your trigger finger is going to make two things simpler: your accuracy and your speed. Who doesn't want more accuracy or more speed? I don't know. I will also submit to you this: people that say, I always slap the trigger. Okay, I slap the trigger if the target is appropriate. For example, if I have just drawn the gun and I'm drawing to a 10 yard target, I am not going to carefully press the trigger. I am going to be smashing the trigger probably from outside all the way in. If I have just reloaded my gun and the target makes it appropriate, like 7 yards, 10 yards, 5 yards target, I am not going to like touch the trigger, prep the trigger or anything like that. I'm going to smash through the trigger. What I am submitting to everybody that is watching, once I've already made that first shot where I slapped the crap out of the trigger, right? Because I wanted to violently get through it because I don't want to waste time prepping or touching or whatever. Once I've made that progress, why would I like surrender all that progress to start the whole process again from a distance? Distance, travel takes more time. Travel allows for dummy to jump in there and move the gun. So once I've initiated the sequence, the process, let's say I'm doing a build drill, I can do a build drill like this, where I'm pressing the trigger from a distance, or I can like pulse the trigger. That's a word that helps me stay connected a little bit more to the shoe, so I'm not losing all that travel time. If I just pulse the trigger, I'll pulse the trigger. It probably helps me get those splits a little bit nicer, right? And also doesn't move the gun as much. I think about it like this. If you're on your mouse on your desktop, do you like lift your finger completely off the mouse and beat it to a pulp to open the application you want to open? Or once you've started clicking on that double click or whatever, do you just pulse the trigger or pulse the mouse? How many times do you get trigger freeze on the mouse? I'm not saying that it's not possible that you like have too much pressure, too much tension, like and the finger doesn't come off. Like, can I do this on this? Yeah. Do I ever get trigger freeze? Sure. Often? No. The more I train this way to have a good understanding, the more I am a master of my platform, the less and less I get that. But tension, anxiety, stuff comes up and you get tense and like you can have that problem. But I'm not training for the one time I have the problem. I'm training for like the 99% of the time that I get really good trigger presses because I've learned my platform. So your trigger should be, your trigger and your platform, your trigger on your platform and your trigger finger need to get intimate. Go take your gun on a coffee date, you know, get over there and start doing this kind of work where your finger moves forward just enough and there's nothing left. And every now and again, you might short stroke it a little bit and then you hear the click of the reset. Okay, I didn't go far enough to grab the next mechanical reset. I think if you're playing with the idea of traveling as little as you need to, there might be like, you know, a few times where you're a little short. Good, that's you learning the platform. If you're constantly coming all the way off, right? Let's say I came all the way off and now like when I go press, there's like a bunch of travel. This trigger doesn't have a bunch of travel, but if you have more travel than necessary to make the trigger go off again, see if you can go a little shorter next time. That is you getting used to it. Notice that none of what I just showed you included shooting the gun live. That's a distraction. Now, do you then have to be able to do this live? Yeah, eventually, yeah. You should be able to boom, go back to that like immediate, you know, what we would deem like the last wall or just about the gun's about to break again. I just pause right there, boom, boom, boom. And then what eventually, if you start training this way, what you'll eventually get is boom, boom. And you're like, oh my. I went straight to where that wall is again, and the gun went off immediately. You get that 12 or 13 or 14 split, and you're like, ooh, and then, you know, it goes into your vein. You're like, how do I do that over and over again? But that's the discovery that you need to do. Again, you want to do this in a safe environment. Do it at home, dry for a while. You know, just like I did, resetting the slide, trying to figure out where your finger needs to go to get the next mechanical reset. How far do I need to go before the trigger is about to break? All that stuff, right? Learning to be intimate with your trigger. Then take it to the range, one shot at a time, and then try to do 2 shots at a time. And can I go boom, boom, and get back to that last wall before the trigger breaks again? There is, in my opinion, I haven't found, I'll speak for myself, I haven't found a downside to overtraining my grip, my eyes, and my trigger. I think I am more in control. I have more confidence. I am better equipped to use the tool. And pressure is going to deteriorate my performance no matter what. So I don't want to have less performance so that, you know, I'm just used to not performing very well. Essentially, that's what people are saying. It's like, I always press really long so that I don't ever... Look, I'm also not submit to you that if you're like a cop or a military guy and you have like obviously rules of engagement, you have standard operating procedures, all that stuff, that you should be like prepping the trigger. I'm not saying that at all. I think you should have multiple ways in which you press the trigger, and maybe I'll talk about it next, but I'm not submitting to you. I'm just saying once you've begun the engagement of shooting, and you're going to continue shooting for whatever reason, you need to, or it's a stage and you're whatever. I mean, it's a sport or whatever. If you're going to continue, maybe you're like, I'm about to do a bill drill. Why would I lose the connection with my trigger shoot and do these long presses when I can do shorter presses and get more performance out of it? The 4 different ways you should manipulate your trigger. First one, learn to press the trigger from on the frame, right? So you set a part-time, if you haven't heard of trigger break at speed, I'm pretty sure there's tons of videos out there. Just Google, you know, YouTube will help you. Trigger break at speed, or get on the Dryfire program that I have, and we talk about a bunch of that. So from the frame, on the beep, you're trying to smash all the way through. But I think these trigger breaks at speed are more testing the grip than they are your trigger manipulations, right? I don't think this is like true trigger work, but I'm just saying you should know how to press the trigger all 4 different ways and get good results because your grip is good and your eyes are good. All right, so from the frame, that's one of them. From air gap, like you're not touching the shoe, you're inside the trigger and you smash all the way through. From touching, but not taking out any slack. And then of course, from prep, if you want to train that. Again, I'm not submitting them. People should always prep the trigger. But man, if I am pulling up to that Carry Optics Nationals 35, 40 yard target with a partial underneath it, you best believe I am prepping that trigger to the final wall before I let that shot break. And it's not a surprise break. I know when my trigger breaks because I've mastered my trigger. I'm gonna pull it to that last little bit, make sure that my sights are stable enough for the shot that I need to make, and finish the press rather than initiate the press, and then hope that it breaks magically or surprise or something like that. I don't believe in any of that stuff. So yes, there are multiple ways in which to press the trigger. I think you need to master your trigger travel. That's the point of this video. If you master your trigger travel, you're gonna be very good about like how far forward do I need to go to make it reset again, and how far back can I go before the trigger breaks again. And you're going to both save time and accuracy if you will get good at this. If you're good at trigger, your grip probably won't have to work quite as hard. It's just a fact. The more I'm violent with the trigger, the more my grip is going to have to sustain that movement of the gun. And I'm not saying undertrain your grip and overtrain your trigger. No, your grip should be amazing, should be like a monster grip. The gun won't move no matter how you press the trigger. But there will be some shots where you can be a hair more delicate with less travel on your trigger and make the grip job a little simpler, that your grip is not gonna have to go sustain that to make a shot that's very particular 20, 25 yards happen. Again, overtraining is the way to go. So I hope you find that helpful. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you have questions, put them under the video. Until next time, get after it.